You just checked your bank account and a massive chunk of your paycheck is missing. Your first thought is probably that your boss is stealing from you or that some debt collector just illegally wiped out your rent money. There is a massive myth out there that anyone can just reach into your bank account and take whatever they want. People think bill collectors have a magic button they can push to drain your funds the second you fall behind. That is completely false. Nobody can legally touch your hard-earned money without jumping through some very specific, very strict legal hoops first. The law actually has your back here, but you have to know the rules to protect yourself. I am going to walk you through exactly how much of your paycheck they can legally take, who is actually allowed to do it, and how you can stop them. First, we need to clear up the biggest misunderstanding right out of the gate. Credit card companies, hospitals, payday lenders, and even your cell phone provider cannot just take money out of your check. It does not matter if you owe them $10,000 and you have been ignoring their phone calls for a year. They do not have the power to garnish your wages. Wage garnishment is a legal process where a creditor gets a court order to take money directly out of your paycheck before it ever hits your hands. A regular debt collector cannot do this on their own. First, they have to sue you in civil court. You will get served with an official court summons. If you ignore that summons and do not show up to court, the judge will issue a default judgment. A default judgment is simply a formal court ruling that says yes, you owe this exact amount of money, and the creditor has the legal right to collect it. Only after they have that judgment in their hands can they go to the judge and ask for a writ of garnishment. That writ is the actual legal document they hand to your employer. So if you just missed a few payments on a credit card and they have not sued you yet, your paycheck is completely safe. Now, let us talk about the rules once they actually do get that court order. When a regular creditor garnishes your pay, federal law steps in to set a strict limit. The federal rule says they can only take the lesser of two amounts. They can take 25% of your disposable earnings, or they can take any amount you earn that is more than 30 times the federal minimum wage. Your disposable earnings is the money left over after your employer takes out the legally required stuff, like taxes and Social Security. Think about it this way. If you make $400 a week, 30 times the minimum wage is $217.50. They cannot touch that protected amount. That leaves about $182 of disposable earnings. 25% of that protected amount is around $45. So out of a $400 check, that regular creditor can only take about $45. The law intentionally forces them to leave you enough to pay your rent, buy your groceries, and keep your lights on. These numbers shift a bit depending on where you live, because some states offer even stronger protections and lower the percentage to 15 or 20%, but the baseline rule is exactly what we just covered. But there is a massive trap you need to watch out for. There is a completely different set of rules for debts that are not regular consumer bills. The biggest myth is that all debts are treated equally under the law. They are not. If you owe money to the government, or if you owe money for a child, they do not need to sue you in civil court to take your money. They have what lawyers call administrative garnishment powers. Administrative means they can bypass the court system entirely. If you owe back taxes to the Internal Revenue Service, they can send a letter directly to your employer and take a huge portion of your check without a judge ever signing off on it. They do not need a default judgment. They do not need to serve you a summons. Their internal paperwork acts as the legal authorization. The same brutal truth applies to unpaid child support. If you fell behind on child support, the state agency handling your case can immediately issue an income withholding order. An income withholding order is a specialized legal command that forces your employer to divert your money directly to the other parent. Because this involves kids and government agencies, the rules are incredibly aggressive. Instead of the 25% limit for a credit card, child support can legally take up to 50 or even 60% of your paycheck if you are way behind on payments. The only thing that slows them down is if you are actively supporting another spouse or other children in your current household. But even then, they can still take a massive bite out of your pay. Another common scenario that brings people to the internet late at night is medical debt. You went to the emergency room, you got a $10,000 bill, and now the hospital is threatening your livelihood. Medical debt is treated exactly the same as a credit card debt. The hospital cannot take your paycheck just because you owe them money. They cannot garnish your wages right away. They have to follow that exact same path. They have to file a lawsuit, serve you the paperwork, get a court date, win the case, and then petition the judge for a writ of garnishment. This process usually takes months, sometimes up to a year. That means if a hospital bill just went to collections last week, nobody is touching your next paycheck. While we are talking about what they can take, we also have to talk about what they cannot touch. The law recognizes that you need certain funds to survive. These are called exempt funds. Exempt means protected by law, making them completely off limits to creditors. If you receive Social Security benefits, a pension, or disability payments, those funds are generally exempt from garnishment by regular creditors. Even if a credit card company already sued you and won, they cannot legally take your Social Security check. If your Social Security money goes into a regular bank account, the bank is supposed to automatically protect 2 months' worth of those benefits from being seized by debt collectors. It is a built-in safety net to ensure that elderly and disabled people are not left completely destitute by a garnishment order. Now let us talk about your job. When an employer receives a garnishment order, a lot of people worry they are going to get fired. A boss might see that court order and think you are a financial liability. Federal law steps in here again. You cannot be fired just because your wages are being garnished by one single creditor. That is a hard and fast federal rule. If they fire you over that first garnishment, you can actually sue them. However, you need to be incredibly careful. If you get a second garnishment from a completely different creditor, that federal protection completely disappears. If you have 2 creditors garnishing your wages at the same time, your employer is legally allowed to let you go. Losing your job over a second garnishment is a brutal reality that catches a lot of hardworking people off guard. So if you are looking at a notice from your employer right now and you see that a garnishment is about to start, you are probably wondering what you can actually do about it. You do not just have to sit there and take it. When you receive that initial court summons, you have a chance to fight it. You can file an answer with the court. Filing an answer is simply your official written response to the lawsuit, where you get to tell the judge your side of the story. Sometimes debt collectors sue the wrong person, or the debt is way too old to be legally collected. Every state has a strict time limit on how long a creditor has to sue you. This is called the statute of limitations. If the debt is older than that time limit, you can tell the judge and the entire case gets thrown out. You just have to show up and speak up. Even if the creditor already has the judgment and the garnishment has already started, you still have options. In almost every state, you can file a claim of exemption. A claim of exemption is a formal request asking the judge to reduce or completely stop the garnishment because it is causing you extreme financial hardship. If you can prove that taking 25% of your check means you will not be able to buy groceries or pay your rent, the judge has the power to lower that percentage. Sometimes, the judge will even pause the garnishment entirely and force the creditor to work out a payment plan with you instead. This depends entirely on your local court rules, but it exists as a lifeline when things look completely desperate. If you are dealing with tax debts or child support, the rules shift heavily in favor of the government, but you still have specific rights. You can usually request a hearing to prove that the massive garnishment is preventing you from meeting your basic living expenses. The agency might agree to a temporary payment plan that takes a smaller bite out of your check. You never know until you raise your hand and ask the judge or the agency for relief. Ignoring the problem is the absolute worst thing you can do. We covered a lot of heavy legal mechanics here, and it is critical to remember that this is your general education. Laws shift, local statutes change, and your specific situation carries details that make your case unique. If you are dealing with a summons, or if your check is already being garnished to the bone, you need someone who knows your local rules inside and out. This is the exact moment when it makes sense to reach out to a legal aid clinic or a local attorney. A lawyer can review the paperwork, file that claim of exemption for you, and make sure the creditor is not taking a single penny more than the law strictly allows. Finding a professional who understands the system is the smartest move you can make to protect your family. Have you ever had your wages garnished, or are you currently dealing with a debt collector threatening to take you to court? Tell me about your situation down in the comments, because reading your real-world scenarios helps everyone watching understand how messy this gets. If this breakdown helped clear up the confusion around your paycheck, please pass it along to a friend or coworker who might be stressing over their own money problems right now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to keep learning about the everyday laws that impact your wallet.